Philip once had a woman he liked in his youth. When she divorced and returned to the country, I was forgotten in a heavy rain. That day, I borrowed an umbrella from a passing cleaner. Then I went to the airport and randomly bought the nearest flight. I thought, anywhere is fine, as long as there is no Philip and Ophelia. At 6 o'clock, Philip's car returned home. It was the servant who came out to greet him, not his wife Sophia. Only then did Philip remember that he was so worried about Ophelia that he forgot to pick her up from the market. But it didn't matter. His wife had a gentle temperament and would never get angry over such a small thing. At 7 o'clock, the rain stopped. The sky was very dark. Sophia still hadn't come home. Philip began to feel an inexplicable anxiety. He called her 3 times. The first time no one answered. The second and third times, he couldn't get through anymore. Chapter 1. The heavy rain came suddenly, and it seemed like the sky turned dark in an instant. I ran somewhat awkwardly to the eaves by the roadside to take shelter from the rain. I looked blankly at the pouring rain. An hour ago, Philip said he would come to pick me up and take me home. But now, he was still nowhere to be seen. The girls taking shelter from the rain around me were gradually being picked up. Their boyfriends or husbands tried their best to tilt the umbrella over their heads, carefully protecting them. I think Philip must be carefully protecting Ophelia like this at the moment, the woman he liked when he was young. Later, they missed each other due to a twist of fate. I heard she suffered a lot of grievances after marriage. During the 3 months of the divorce lawsuit, Ophelia's mother passed away. Philip often worries so much that he can't sleep at night, sighing deeply. And today is the day when Ophelia has finally succeeded in getting a divorce and is returning home. In the morning, Philip took a shower and changed into a newly tailored suit. The tie he wore had a subtle mandala pattern. After marriage, I took care of all his needs. But that tie wasn't bought by me. The rain fell endlessly, as lively as frying beans. Yet my heart suddenly felt calm. Hello, I smiled and waved at the passing cleaner. The newly bought seafood was exchanged for her old umbrella. Seeing her so happy, I couldn't help but smile too. The umbrella is very old, yet it can still shield from wind and rain, better than a man who never arrives. I walked out of the market and casually hailed a taxi by the roadside. When I got to the airport, I realized I had nowhere to go. I only have a grandmother left, but if I go to her, she will know that I must have been wronged. In the end, I randomly bought a ticket for the nearest flight. I thought, anywhere is fine, as long as there is no Philip and Ophelia. In 3 years of marriage, Ophelia filled my life like air, silently and invisibly. I can't endure it any longer. Just as I was about to board the plane, my phone suddenly rang. The call was from Philip. I thought for a moment and didn't answer. When the ringing stopped, I added his number to the blacklist. Chapter 2. Philip came home at 6 o'clock. When the car came to a stop, only the servant came to greet him. He paused, and after taking off his coat, he didn't hand it to the servant but draped it over his arm instead. "Where's Madam? Madam hasn't returned yet." Philip stopped in his tracks. It was then he remembered that Sophia had spontaneously decided to go to the market to buy fresh produce. He said he would pick her up to go home together, but Ophelia fainted from crying in front of her mother's grave. He hurried to take Ophelia to the hospital and forgot about picking her up. Philip glanced at the pouring rain outside. He felt a faint sense of guilt. Would Sophia be angry? But as soon as this thought emerged, Philip shook his head with a smile. He had never met anyone with a gentler and more generous nature than his wife. She would never get angry over such a small matter. "Sir, I see you've been caught in the rain. You should hurry upstairs and take a hot bath." The servant whispered a reminder. Philip nodded. "If Madam returns, tell her I'm upstairs." He went upstairs to take a hot bath. Yet, for some reason, he felt a bit uneasy during the bath. Coming out of the bathroom, he felt a bit congested. He wanted to take a cold medicine, but couldn't find the medicine box. Philip looked at his watch. It was almost 7. Sophia still hadn't returned. The rain outside seemed to have stopped, but the sky had grown darker. He took out his phone and called Sophia. The phone rang for a long time, but no one answered, until he finally hung up. Philip frowned slightly, which was something that had never happened before. Sophia would never miss his call. Maybe the heavy rain caused a traffic jam, or there was a minor accident on the road. Philip felt his heart suddenly tighten. He quickly made a second call, but the phone that could be reached just now was now unreachable. His frown deepened, and his expression gradually turned cold. Yet he still patiently made a third call. It was still unreachable. He stood holding his phone for quite a while. Then he casually checked online. Oh, it turned out that in his situation, he had been blacklisted by the other party. Philip laughed in exasperation. He felt he should take back the words. I've never met anyone with a gentler and more generous nature than my wife. When the plane landed in that unfamiliar city, it was already late at night. As the signal returned, new messages started coming into the phone one after another. I noticed several text messages from an unfamiliar number. Hello, Sophia. I'm Ophelia. I heard that you and Philip are upset and not going home because of me. I'm very worried and also very sorry. I think I need to explain the situation between Philip and me to you. He did like me, but that was when we were kids. Philip always called me sister, and I saw him as a younger brother. Because of me, there is a rift between you two, and that's really not what I wanted to see. No one wishes for Philip to be happy more than I do. Sophia, after receiving my message, could you give Philip a call? Or at least let us know you are safe. I find it ridiculous. If you're really worried about my safety, there are countless ways. With Philip's family background, finding my identification information is a piece of cake. But after I left home, the first to look for me wasn't the police. It was Ophelia. I really loathe it. Any slight change in my life, Ophelia quickly finds out. I didn't respond, but Ophelia was persistent. She called. I pressed to answer, but there was silence on the other end. After a moment, a low laugh suddenly came through. Then it was Ophelia's voice. Turns out you're not as good as Philip said. You've really endured 3 years and only now starting to make a fuss. Sophia. Ophelia suddenly called my name. Since you're willing to make room, I'll have Philip give you more alimony. I smiled and said, you've been through a divorce once and fought a tough divorce case, so you must be experienced. I'll leave it to you then. If the settlement is substantial, I'll treat you to coffee. After saying that, I hung up the phone directly. Then I blocked the number and set up a filter for all unknown calls. Chapter 3. The third day since Sophia left home. Philip called her grandmother, who was thousands of miles away. After some small talk, he tentatively mentioned, Grandmother, Sophia was just saying a few days ago that she wanted to come back to see you. No need to come back. I'm doing well. It's such a long journey. Don't bother. Philip clutched his phone. On the vast terrace, he could see the setting red sun in the west, and his heart seemed to sink little by little with that sun. He knew Sophia had only this one relative left, so he naturally assumed she must have gone back to her grandmother's in a fit of pique, but she hadn't gone there. So, where has Sophia been these past few days? He turned around and immediately saw that familiar dressing table. The dressing table was as clean as ever, but her comb hadn't been put away in time. He walked over and picked it up, finding a few long hairs tangled in the comb. Sophia's hair is very good and black, never permed or dyed. He clutched the comb, lost in deep thought. It wasn't until Ophelia's call came through the second time that he snapped out of it. Philip, I just passed by your garden and saw that the roses have all withered. Ophelia's gentle voice came through. Have the gardener clear them away. They don't look good. No need. For the first time, he directly refused Ophelia. Ophelia was obviously taken aback for a moment, but quickly said, Philip, are you angry? Yes. This is your and Sophia's home. Naturally, you two make the decisions. There was a sob in Ophelia's voice. Philip's heart softened again. I didn't mean it that way. Sister, Sophia hasn't sent any news yet? No, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have come back. Ophelia began to cry softly. Philip listened to the faint sound of crying, feeling inexplicably irritated. Sophia rarely cried, only on their wedding night. Because of the pain, did she cry in his arms for a while? And then there was the first year of marriage. When he missed her birthday, it seemed that at the time, it was because Ophelia's husband was abusive, and he was so worried that he went abroad overnight. Philip felt inexplicably annoyed. In 3 years of marriage, he never knew Sophia had such a stubborn and willful side. He walked to the bedside and sat down. After thinking for a long time, he decided to call Sophia's only good friend. The friend was surprised and said she hadn't received a call from her. Sophia hadn't gone to her city either. When Philip hung up the phone, his hand was a bit shaky. He lit a cigarette but didn't smoke it. Sophia has a bit of a cleanliness obsession. When she's at home, every corner of the house is completely free of any odor. The phone rang again, but it was an unfamiliar landline number. In the past, he would never have answered such a call, but this time, he pressed the answer button immediately. "Hello," his voice was somewhat trembling. "Philip. It's me, Sophia." For some reason, when Sophia's familiar voice sounded, Philip was usually reserved and quiet. But at this moment, he inexplicably spoke with some urgency and harshness. "Sophia, you're not a 3-year-old child anymore. Running away from home is such a childish thing to do. Is it something someone your age should be doing? Do you know what kind of negative impact it will have on the Koo family if this gets out?" "I'm sorry." Philip clutched his phone and loosened his tie, yet he felt as if the heavy stone weighing on his chest had suddenly been lifted. "If you know you were wrong, then hurry back." His tone softened a bit. "Philip, I have something else to discuss with you." "What is it?" "I sent you something, and by now, you should have received it. Why send something by mail when you could just bring it back when you come home?" Sophia still spoke in that gentle and calm tone. "I'm not going home. Make sure to sign for the delivery. If you have no objections after reading it, sign it. I'll call you again in 2 days. This phone is borrowed from someone else, so don't call back. I won't be able to answer." "Sophia, what do you mean?" Philip felt his heart, which had just relaxed, suddenly tighten again. "Philip, I've been a bit unhappy in the 3 years since I married you, so let's get a divorce." Chapter 4. Philip didn't say anything. Sophia also remained silent, as if politely waiting for his response. "Where are you now?" "That's not important." Philip glanced at the silent twilight outside the window. "Sophia, why are you upset?" On the other end of the line, Sophia didn't say another word. She seemed to let out a low laugh. Then, she hung up the phone directly. Philip almost instinctively called back immediately, but the person who answered was already a stranger. An aunt. She spoke in a dialect from somewhere that Philip couldn't understand. He could only apologize and then hang up. The twilight descended heavily, and he just sat there in the deepening dusk, motionless. After 3 years of marriage, Sophia was like a cup of warm water always at 45 degrees. She never got angry, never lost her temper. She always spoke in a gentle voice. Everyone liked her and praised her, to the point where he almost forgot. The beginning of their marriage was nothing more than a feud between elders, and for her to secure the position of the Koo family's eldest daughter-in-law with such a minor favor, how could she be as magnanimous and harmless as she appeared, without any scheming? Philip turned and walked to the dressing table, putting down the comb he had been holding. He saw himself in the mirror. His brows were tightly knit, and there was a storm of anger in his eyes. He was never one to show his emotions, yet now, he was repeatedly losing his composure over such a trivial matter. Philip quickly returned to his usual expressionless self. He stepped out of the master bedroom and went downstairs. Ophelia called him from the living room downstairs, and he only responded with a faint acknowledgement. He asked the servant to bring over the packages received today. Philip picked out the letter sent by Sophia and opened it. Ophelia stood to the side, covering her mouth as she let out a low gasp. Philip, expressionless, tore up the divorce agreement and threw it into the trash can. "Philip." Ophelia stepped forward and gently tugged at his sleeve, advising softly, "Don't be angry." Sophia was probably just acting on impulse. She has always been gentle and sensible. "I suppose it's my fault. If I hadn't returned to the country and troubled you with these matters, she wouldn't have acted out." Philip with a slightly cold voice, "What does it have to do with you? It's her own immaturity. Isn't it because you spoiled her that she's immature?" Ophelia forced a smile, even abroad. "I often heard about how loving you two were." Before she could finish speaking, she suddenly burst into tears. Philip laughed coldly. Why I married her. Others might not know. But don't you? Ophelia looked at him with tears in her eyes. Philip, was it really because of me? Philip didn't answer. He just gently pulled back his sleeve. I have to go out for a while. Do you want the driver to take you back or would you like to stay here? Ophelia wiped away her tears. I'll wait for you here. With things so tense between you and Sophia, I wouldn't be able to sleep if I went back. Philip nodded and instructed the servant to prepare the guest room. He asked the driver to prepare the car again, then turned and left. Ophelia watched him leave. She glanced again at the shredded divorce agreement in the trash can. She pressed her lips together and slowly sat down on the sofa. Why did Philip tear up the divorce agreement? He seemed to have no intention of divorcing Sophia at all. Chapter 5. I knew the day I left. For Philip, finding someone's whereabouts is as easy as pie. It just depends on whether he wants to or not. So, when I saw Philip underneath the guest house, it wasn't very surprising either. In the early autumn weather, he wore a light gray thin trench coat, leaning against the car smoking. He was handsome, tall, and every move he made drew attention. In comparison, I seemed particularly ordinary, a loose cotton and linen long dress, with long hair casually tied up with a handkerchief, no makeup, carrying a supermarket shopping bag, more like the little maid in the old Koo family house. When I first married him, I often felt ashamed of my own inferiority, but now, I've long since come to terms with it. Just like a simple home-cooked dish can never make it to a lavish banquet table, Philip and I were wrong from the very beginning. He stubbed out his cigarette and looked at me with a calm expression. I also put down the shopping bags that were cutting into my hands. Philip glanced at his watch, his voice as cold and steady as ever when he spoke. Go pack your things. 30 minutes should be enough. Did you sign it? I reached out to him. Give me the divorce agreement, and I'll go back with you to complete the procedures. Philip's indifferent eyes still showed no emotion. It's just that his eyes were a bit deeper in color. It's not suitable to announce our divorce to the public right now. Then let's not make it public for now. As long as the paperwork is done. Sophia, you know, next week is the company's anniversary celebration, and you need to attend with me. Philip curved his lips, a hint of mockery in his smile. Your timing for causing a scene is impeccable. But you should know, I'm not the kind of person who can be easily manipulated. I didn't speak, just quietly watched Philip. We had done all the most intimate things a married couple could do. But men can separate sex and love very clearly. But a woman cannot. The rain didn't drench my body, but my heart was soaked. But Philip will never understand, because he never loved me. If you sign the divorce papers, then I'll attend the anniversary celebration with you next week. I can cooperate with anything the company needs from me. I looked at him and even smiled gently as I used to. Philip, this won't harm you in the slightest. Okay. He looked at me deeply for a long time, finally nodding. After the company's anniversary celebration next week, I'll sign. I didn't go back with Philip. It was only the day before the company's anniversary celebration that he flew back to Beijing, to avoid drawing attention and prevent gossip journalists from writing rumors about a marital crisis. His car personally picked him up from the airport and brought him back to the marital home. When I got out of the car, Ophelia greeted me like the lady of the house. Sophia, you finally came back. She quickly stepped forward, holding my hand. Her eyes reddened, and tears fell. I looked at her indifferently. Her clothes, jewelry, and makeup were obviously carefully prepared. It was that kind of understated yet comfortable luxury, just like every lady of a wealthy family, dressed up to entertain guests at home. I didn't say anything, just withdrew my hand. Ophelia had beautifully done nails, with a gemstone ring and a diamond ring on her fair fingers, but there was nothing on my hand. The wedding ring had long been taken off. There was even a thin callus on the palm. When I first learned of Ophelia's existence, I foolishly compared myself to her in my mind. But now, no matter how beautiful and graceful she is, there isn't even the slightest ripple in my heart anymore. I didn't look at her again, nor did I respond. I carried the bag and walked around her. Moving forward, Ophelia bit her lip awkwardly. The servant came over to help. Madam, let me carry it. I smiled and avoided. No need. The servant, not daring to say much, looked at Philip with some difficulty. Let her be. Philip withdrew his gaze and walked towards the main building. But I didn't return to the main building with him. Instead, I went to the guest annex. Sophia. Philip finally got angry, perhaps because I did this in front of a bunch of servants. It really embarrassed him and Ophelia. I didn't stop, nor did I respond. I have no desire to communicate with Philip. Now I just wish the anniversary celebration would end smoothly soon. Then, our marriage can also end quickly. Chapter 6. When Philip and I entered the banquet hall arm in arm, the atmosphere was at its peak. He was like a gentle and considerate husband, and I, as always, was the gentle and virtuous wife everyone praised. While exchanging pleasantries with others, he held my hand tightly. From time to time, he would turn his head to glance at me, his expression gentle. I would also lower my head and smile. But in the past, that smile was a genuine expression of shy happiness. Now, however, he wears a mask. I despise this version of myself, and I loathe him like this too. I just hope it ends sooner. But by the end of the banquet, a dish of sashimi was placed in front of me. A faint fishy smell wafted over, and suddenly my stomach churned violently. I stood up abruptly and rushed to the restroom, vomiting until I was dizzy. As I got up, everything went black and I fainted. When I opened my eyes again, I was already in the hospital. Many people from the family came, and Philip was sitting by my bedside. He held my hand, with a rare joy on his face. Sophia, do you know, you're pregnant, just 45 days old. His voice was low and gentle, as if he was afraid of startling me with his tenderness. In that moment, I suddenly felt a bit dazed. Philip rarely had moments of such evident tenderness. 3 years passed in a flash, and there were only a few such moments. And in those 3 years, his meetings with Ophelia were also very few. Yet each time, he was exceedingly gentle, but his tenderness towards Ophelia was simply because she was the one he liked. And his tenderness towards me was not because of me in the past. Now, it is only for the child in my belly. Grandmother already knows about your pregnancy. He grasped my hand, the smile on his lips soft. I've already arranged for someone to bring her over. She was so happy. She cried with excitement over the phone. I lay on the bed and suddenly started to cry too. For 3 years after the wedding, I didn't get pregnant, which was a worry for grandmother. But grandmother never knew that I wasn't pregnant because Philip said he didn't want children. He wanted to enjoy a few years of just the two of us. He was always very careful about contraception. But why is he so happy about it now? After the family left, the hospital room quieted down. Philip brought me water. Don't bring up the divorce again. Take good care of yourself. And focus on your pregnancy. I pushed away the warm water. I don't want this child. Philip's face showed no emotion at all. He looked down, towering over me. You tell grandmother yourself. As long as you're willing to let grandmother, at her age, be heartbroken for you. Chapter 7. Philip was certain that I would continue to compromise to avoid worrying grandmother. But he forgot. When my grandmother was young, she dared to remove her foot bindings and rebel against her parents. She dared to break off an engagement and run away from a marriage, fleeing alone to relatives 1,000 miles away. After her husband became addicted to drugs, she boldly divorced him and secretly took their only daughter. Now she is old, appearing fragile and kind, at peace with the world. But I know that if my grandmother knew about me and Philip, she would definitely support all my decisions. Philip turned down all the company's matters. He began to wholeheartedly stay by my side. I fainted at the anniversary celebration and it was discovered that I was pregnant, which has already become a widely spread rumor. Reporters and media surrounded the hospital, making it impenetrable. On the day of discharge, the Koo family's entourage that came to pick me up was quite grand. Everyone says I'm lucky to marry into the Koo family with such a background, having a considerate husband and loving in-laws, and now being pregnant. It could be said that I'm a winner in life. It's laughable to say, but when the world evaluates a woman's success or failure, they often look at the chips men add to her. No one pays attention to her as an individual, nor does anyone care about how turbulent her actual life is. Ophelia has already left Beijing. Her grandmother wants her to stay there permanently. In the car, Philip held my hand. I told you from the beginning, between Ophelia and me, it's not a romantic relationship. We grew up together, and when we were young, she injured her forehead saving me, and she still has the scar. I really liked her when I was a child, but now, I just see her as a sister. Sophia, you really have no reason to fuss over such a small matter. However, since it bothers you, I will be more mindful in the future. I won't meet with Ophelia privately anymore, nor will I have any other interactions with her. Philip gripped my shoulder, trying to pull me into his arms. Let's end this here. We have a child now. Let's live well as a family of 3, okay? Actually, at that moment, I almost believed it. I've heard that when a woman is pregnant, she secretes a certain hormone. That hormone makes her reluctant to harm the tiny embryo inside her belly. These past few days, I've been conflicted, tangled, and shaken. Grandmother also told me, a husband can belong to someone else, but a child is always your own. Honestly, at that moment, I had the thought, perhaps discovering the pregnancy at this time is a chance given by heaven for Philip and me. No woman wants to kill her own child with her own hands. I'm no exception, but just as I was wavering, Ophelia found a way to contact me. Do you know why Philip suddenly stopped using contraception 6 months ago? I was taken aback. It did seem to start from that time. Philip no longer deliberately used contraception, because, at that time, I decided to get a divorce. You're probably thinking that since I decided to divorce, Philip should have been more careful with contraception. Ophelia laughed suddenly as she spoke. Her laughter was somewhat piercing, yet somewhat desolate. Sophia, I cannot bear children. If I could have children, why would Philip have compromised to marry you in the first place? So, do you know how your child came to be? He was only fortunate enough to come into this world to pave the way for me. I shouldn't have told you this now. I should have waited until the fruit was ripe and fell to the ground, when the child was born. But Sophia, her voice carried a destructive jealousy. I regret it. I would rather destroy this path than have you give birth to Philip's child. I sat there, feeling cold all over. That chill seemed to spread instantly from the soles of my feet to my entire body. Yet I didn't cry. Instead, there was an inexplicable sense of relief. I clearly sensed it. All the emotions and ties to Philip were let go completely, just like that. Have you ever thought about what if I insisted on having this child? That's not your character. You seem gentle, generous, patient, and tolerant, but in your eyes, there's no room for even a grain of sand. I suddenly laughed. Ophelia, thank you for telling me this. Sophia, don't hate me. I just love him too much. You know, love is always selfish, blind. I didn't speak, ended the call, stood up, and walked to the window. In the garden at dusk, the roses were almost all withered. A gust of wind blew, and the last one on the bare branches fell into the soil. The flowers have fallen. The dream should also be completely awakened. Chapter 8. The day Philip last sat down to have dinner with Sophia, she was wearing a light green dress. That dress looked somewhat familiar. He thought for a moment before he remembered. When they first met, Sophia seemed to be wearing a similar one. At that time, he had failed in his struggle against the family. Ophelia, heartbroken and in despair, married far away in a foreign land. He went to meet Sophia, trying to find an excuse to dismiss her, but the unbearable and cruel words. He only managed to say the beginning. Her eyes turned red. Philip had never seen a girl shed so many tears. Her eyes were large, and those tears gathered in her eye sockets. It took a while before they fell in a stream. She choked and said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I really didn't know you were forced to come see me. I'll go back and tell my family elders to annul our engagement. She cried in embarrassment because of his harsh words. Yet she kept apologizing to him. Philip watched her stand up crying, and she accidentally knocked over the coffee. The coffee stain soiled her light green dress. She bowed her head to wipe it, tears falling one by one. Somehow, his heart was slightly moved. Thinking of the hopeless romance, thinking of the married Ophelia, he unexpectedly felt a sense of drifting despondency. Your name is Sophia, right? She was taken aback for a moment, then nodded, yes. Do you want to marry me? She clutched the hem of her skirt, pressing her lips together. Her long, thick, curled eyelashes drooped down, hiding her slightly reddened eyes. She nodded lightly, but her face turned red. Then let's get married. She suddenly widened her eyes, a look of shock and surprise in them. But just now you. He smiled, leaning back lazily against the chair. Looking at her, the Koo family's descendants all have quite good looks. Moreover, at that time he was still young and impetuous, with a touch of flirtatiousness and frivolity. He looked at her and smiled like that, and she was utterly embarrassed. Just teasing you, Sophia, my dear. Please don't go complaining to my grandmother when you get back. She shook her head vigorously. No, I won't tell. After speaking, her ears turned completely red, and she didn't dare to look at him again. After the date, he took her home. When getting out of the car, he held her hand. 3 months later, they got engaged. 7 months later, she married him, and now, she has been married to him for 3 years. She has their child in her belly. Philip felt a strange emotion surging within his heart. This child came as planned. He should be happy, but that happiness seemed to carry other meanings. These days, he often can't help but think, will the child be a boy or a girl? Of course, it would be best if it's a boy, but if it's a girl, and she looks a lot like Sophia, that wouldn't be bad either. But why does he hope the child looks like Sophia? His original plan was for this child to call Ophelia Mom in the future. Philip vaguely feels that some things seem to be getting out of control. Yet, he surprisingly doesn't want to stop. He inexplicably wants to let it spiral out of control. That day's dinner was made by Sophia herself. She didn't have morning sickness that day and was in good spirits, so he just let her be. She even accompanied him, drinking a little bit of fruit wine that was harmless to pregnant women. When he was slightly tipsy, he thought Sophia looked exceptionally beautiful. Did you put on makeup? Just a little bit. The lipstick color is very pretty. Thank you. She smiled with her eyes slightly curved. He smiled too. He stood up and walked behind her, placing his hands on the armrests of her chair. Philip lowered his head, his prominent nose brushing against her thick sideburns. It was an intimate and enchanting closeness. Shall I have the servant move your things back to the master bedroom? She neither nodded nor shook her head. She simply raised her glass and clinked it with his again. Later, he took her for a walk in the garden. The moon was bright, the stars sparse, and a layer of slightly withered rose petals lay on the lawn. She was very quiet along the way. Only the early autumn wind blew against the hem of her long dress. Philip followed behind her, suddenly feeling a bit intoxicated. He thought the scene had a certain tranquil charm of time standing still. He couldn't quite remember if she returned to the master bedroom later. He slept very deeply and for a long time. When he woke up from that sleep, it was already noon the next day. He turned over and instinctively reached for the side of the bed. Sophia. The hangover made his head ache a bit. He struggled to sit up. The bedroom was empty, with only one pillow on the large bed. She didn't come to stay last night, and at that time, Philip still didn't know. Not just last night. From then on, Sophia would never set foot here again, day or night. Chapter 9. When I came out after the surgery, grandmother was waiting outside to take me home. I was wrapped in a thick coat, yet I was still shivering from the cold. As the anesthesia wore off, a dull pain began deep in my lower abdomen. Grandmother placed a hot water bottle on my lower abdomen and held my hand tightly. Sophia, let's go home with grandmother. Her body was slightly hunched, and her legs were bent, but her hands were still warm and strong. It felt like she gave me immense courage to move forward. I told the Koo family from the beginning, we don't want any repayment. The principle of being well matched. Grandmother understands it better than anyone. Now that it has come to this, grandmother doesn't blame anyone. She just feels sorry for you. I leaned on grandmother's shoulder, acting spoiled. If you feel sorry for me, then make me a bowl of egg custard. It's been so long since I've had grandmother's egg custard. From now on, grandmother will make it for you every day. I supported grandmother, and grandmother supported me. The midday sun fell on us, and I finally felt warmth on my body. When we reached the hospital entrance, I saw Philip's car. He got out of the car, his face stern, lips pressed into a line. Grandmother instinctively wanted to shield me behind her, but I gently shook my head. Philip strode up to me, reaching out to grasp my shoulders. Sophia, where is the child? Gone. How dare you? How could you, Sophia? He clamped down on my shoulders, his fingers gradually tightening. I saw his pale, ashen face. In his eyes, anger and pain churned. Does it hurt a lot? If it hurts, that's good. I pried open his fingers one by one. Please sign quickly and get the divorce procedures done. I will not divorce you. Philip spoke in a deep, cold voice, word by word. I was somewhat surprised, but didn't have too much emotion. Then let's go to court, if you want to make a big deal out of it. What was once a so-called beautiful story has become a joke over dinner. I smiled indifferently. Then I'll accompany you. Philip wanted to say something more, but his phone suddenly rang. I vaguely heard the name Ophelia again. Then his expression changed. Got it. I'll be right there, he replied in a hurried tone. He hung up the phone and looked at me. Sophia, wait for me to come back, and we'll have a good talk. But I didn't wait for him to come back and talk. I went directly to find Mrs. Koo. I didn't hide anything, nor did I embellish a single word. I just repeated what Ophelia said, word for word. Mrs. Koo couldn't accept the fact that Ophelia was infertile back then, played the villain who broke up the couple, also pinched her nose and had to accept me as her daughter-in-law under the pressure of the elders. For the past 3 years, she has been neither warm nor cold to me, but she hasn't been harsh either. When she found out I was pregnant, she was actually very happy. But now, her grandson is gone. I think, even if she hates me, the one she would hate more would only be Ophelia. Ophelia wants to reconcile with Philip. I'm afraid I'll never be able to get past Mrs. Koo. Ophelia said something very true. I'm actually not a generous person at all. I'm very petty. I hope that the person I like has only me in their heart and eyes. I also hope that those who hurt me do not live happily ever after. Because when they hurt innocent people, they never had a shred of compassion or remorse. Mrs. Koo is a very decisive and ruthless woman, just like back then when she decisively broke up the lovebirds, forcing Ophelia to marry far away. Now she has taken action again. Philip and I quickly dissolved our marriage in the legal sense. And Ophelia, under the thunderous tactics of Mrs. Koo, Ophelia's family couldn't withstand the pressure and began to force her to remarry. I heard she even attempted suicide. Philip stayed by her side in the hospital for a whole day and night. It's also said that Philip was determined to marry Ophelia. Mrs. Koo was so furious that she slapped him twice and wanted to kick him out of the Koo family. But none of this matters to me anymore. I went back with my grandmother to a small town 1,000 miles away. I renovated and tidied up my grandmother's small courtyard. I plan to plant the courtyard full of roses next spring. When the confinement period ended, Philip suddenly came by. Grandmother didn't open the courtyard door. He stayed outside for a long time, only leaving at dawn. And the next morning, when I went out to get milk, I saw him again. In the early winter weather, he was only wearing a thin coat, while I, afraid of the cold, was wrapped in one of grandmother's cotton robes. You see, we always seem like people from two different worlds. The neighbors curiously sized him up, stopping in their tracks. After all, in our small county town, it's rare to see such a handsome and affluent gentleman, but I only glanced at him once before looking away. In my youth, I was attracted by his appearance and foolishly married him without hesitation. But after all, marriage is like drinking water. Only you know if it's hot or cold. I chose this path myself, and I accept it. I've come to terms with it. Philip also didn't speak, but he followed me all the way. I got the milk, bought breakfast, and turned back. He followed me all the way until I reached the gate of the yard. Sophia. He finally spoke, calling my name. I didn't stop, pushed open the gate, went in, and turned to close it. Philip stepped forward and reached out to stop it. Sophia. Ophelia is getting married next spring. When I grew up, it seemed like I never lost my temper with anyone, not even when I had arguments with people. But this time, I suddenly lashed out. Warm milk was poured over his head and onto his face. His outrageously expensive coat and the cashmere sweater underneath were both stained. He was somewhat stunned, furrowing his brows. Sophia, Philip, if the person she is marrying next spring is you, then I would still respect you as a man, but as it stands, it seems you don't love her that much. After all, by giving up the identity of the Coup family heir, he could marry her. And you can't let go. Chapter 10. What Sophia said was actually only half true. He really didn't love Ophelia that much, but it wasn't because he couldn't let go of the so-called heir identity. He just genuinely, long ago, no longer liked her as he did in his youth. After Sophia became pregnant, Philip actually thought about it. The three of them could just live well together as a family. That once vile and despicable thought, he would bury in his heart for a lifetime. Out of sympathy and pity, he once crossed that line with Ophelia in a foreign country's deep night. In a moment of impulse, he gave Ophelia promises about a child and marriage, but in fact, he regretted it very early on. However, Ophelia told Sophia. Then, without hesitation, she got rid of that child, and at the moment he learned the child was gone, Philip found he had only one thought in his heart. That was, he couldn't keep Sophia anymore. Just like a rose, once it falls, but in their marital home, Sophia was everywhere. The servants often blurted out how the lady was, what the lady liked, what if the lady knew, and then there was himself. Every time he returned home at 6 o'clock, knowing full well that person had long gone, yet still hoping it would be her who came out to greet him. He once thought Sophia was like a bland cup of lukewarm water, always at a constant 45 degrees, an unimportant existence. But how can one live without water? He often thought of their last dinner together. She looked like she had a bit of fruit wine. The color of the lipstick she wore that day was beautiful. He often wondered what would have happened if he had held her hand during their walk. He hugged her from behind. He softly called out, "Wife." Would she have softened and given him another chance? He also often wondered what if he hadn't forgotten to pick her up in the heavy rain that day. He appeared in front of her just in time. Would the ending of the story have been completely rewritten? But talking about these things now holds no meaning. He can only tell himself to look forward. Sophia is still single. Sophia has rejected many suitors. Sophia was, after all, very much in love with him back then. He would visit her 2 or 3 times a year. But on his 9th visit to her, the same story played out again. But the protagonist of that story was no longer him. The rain that day was heavy, just like the time he forgot to pick her up. But this time, the protagonist did not make the same mistake as he did. In the pouring rain, the man's car stopped steadily in the rain. Sophia stood under the eaves to shelter from the rain. Seeing the car coming, she wanted to run over and get in, but the man waved his hand repeatedly to stop her. He first got out of the car in the rain, getting soaked to fetch an umbrella. Then he quickly walked up to her, tilting the opened umbrella almost entirely towards her, shielding her as she got into the car first. It was actually a very short distance, just 2 or 3 steps, but the man couldn't bear to let her get even a little bit wet. He would rather be drenched by the rain himself. Philip sat in the car like that, staring blankly at the scene. The wipers swung back and forth rapidly. The entire world was almost swallowed by the heavy rain. The car carrying Sophia sped away, never to be seen again. And that heavy rain from years ago, the heavy rain when he forgot Sophia. Yet long after, it poured down on him like a deluge. Philip gave a faint smile. He started the car and turned it around. The car shot through the dense rain like an arrow. In a certain moment, he seemed to see the once young and naive Sophia again. At that time, they had just gotten engaged. His mother didn't like her, but his grandmother was very fond of her. During the engagement, the grandmother had advised her, "Sophia, if Philip bullies you, come and tell Grandma, and I'll stand up for you." So back then, every time she was teased by him until she was shy, she would always say, "I'm going to tell Grandma." He couldn't help but chuckle. He thought again of their wedding night. She cried from the pain, and he held her, comforting her, jokingly saying, "Why aren't you saying you're going to tell Grandma now?" She cried and laughed, then angrily lunged forward and bit him, and he lowered his head and kissed her, and she obediently closed her eyes beneath him. Philip finally understood. In fact, from the first time he met Sophia, he already liked her. It's just a pity that people often sigh with regret when the flowers fall. Yet when the flowers are in full bloom, they don't seem particularly joyful or appreciative. The second year after Sophia divorced him, the roses in the wedding house had all withered. In the small town 1,000 miles away, grandmother's garden was full of blooming roses. But those beautifully blooming flowers no longer belonged to him. Philip suddenly lifted his face. He was afraid he would embarrassingly burst into tears. Right in the midst of this heavy rain, in Sophia's already begun new life,